You're listening to the One Step Deeper podcast with your host, Jimmy Moore and Brittany Davis. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com.
What's that orange drink in your hand?
Alpha Brain.
Oh, I thought you were going to say alcohol, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not 75 hard.
No, not that. No, Alpha Brain. I was really excited about today's podcast, and I saved it so I could drink it as we were recording because I want to be lit in my brain to talk about today's topic.
We never handle anything less than lit topics on this show. Sadly, that's kind of what we're known for, is lit topics.
Yes, and I've gotten a lot of feedback this last week on our last topic. I've gotten so many people who follow me over on TikTok who have just private messaged me going, "Wow, listen to your podcast. I love it. It's great." And so I just feel like this internal drive to just like continue to bring it. So, Alpha Brain.
We talked about since episode 30, and we're now on episode 35. We've talked about since episode 30, we're turning it up a notch. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but like the last few weeks of episodes have been intense, and by design. Like I think both Brittany and I, this is how we talk all the time. We dialed it back the first 30 episodes just a little bit for you. Now we're kind of going on in a little harder. And I've enjoyed the recent episodes since we came back from our little mini sabbatical that you and I took away from the podcast. But yeah, so last week we dealt with kind of how you break the cycle of childhood trauma. And we kind of want to do a piggyback onto that one this week about dissecting some of those ways that we deal with trauma and why they exist. And so episode 35 today, and the title is
Dissecting, like you said, dissecting trauma responses. And we've got 4 different ones to talk about today. A lot of people know the first 2. That is fight or flight. But we're adding in the other 2 that are very important, which is freeze and fawn.
Okay, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And of course, we will explain all of those things as the show progresses. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com is the website. Go check us out, you guys. We are a traditional podcast, but we also put it everywhere. It comes out on Sundays at 4 p.m. We debut it there on YouTube. So go check it out. It does premiere there. We do the little premiere, so it acts like you're watching it live. And we have people that watch live. Hello, if you're watching this live on YouTube. Hi. Brittany and I sometimes pop in just to say hello if anybody's talking there in the chat. But yeah, we love sharing that on Sundays. It also appears on IGTV at One Step Deeper Podcast. I also put it on my personal Living Low Carb Man page. You put your snippet on there on your page, Becoming Brittany Lee, the day before. Anyway, we put it out there. It's also on the Facebook page and everywhere that you can watch videos. We basically put it. And then on Mondays, we do put it up on the traditional podcast. So that's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Alexa. Go check it out on Mondays. And yeah, so on social media all throughout the week, that is your connection to the One Step Deeper podcast. Go check us out, One Step Deeper Podcast over on Instagram, One Step Deeper Podcast community over on Facebook. We love seeing all the engagement over there. And then finally, leave us a review. And maybe I should make a contest or something about leaving a review. That way we'll get the reviews to come in. Let's just put it this way. If you leave us a review, Jimmy might sweeten the deal. They leave the mystery and they'll be like, well, dang, now I want to leave a review to see what we get. So that's for me to know and you to find out later. Leave us a review is the point. But episode 35 today, this is going to be a fun one, especially after last week's episode. We got so intently and both of us shared very personally into how breaking the generational trauma was so important. But now we need to look at what some of those trauma patterns are, because you have been very good, and thank you for that, at pointing out patterns of trauma that you suspect in me. And I'm like, damn it. Like, you feel like you've overcome it. You feel like you've broken the trauma, and you have. But then the patterns persist. I think that's the thing that people think, well, I'm not in the trauma situation anymore. I've broken it. I'm no longer passing it on. But that's not the end of the story. The healing continues where you recognize, are there parts of who you are? That's who I am. Are there parts of that persist because you used it as a survival mechanism? So I'm going to throw the ball in your court because I know you do a lot of this work. Just start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, so, I prefer the term trauma response rather than triggered. But if we're really like buzzwords, triggered is really the word that we're talking about here. A lot of people will say, I was triggered by that. But a lot of people view triggered as just that first trauma response, which is fight. Like, I'm triggered, right. I got to say something.
Although triggered is kind of a pejorative in our culture right now. Well, you're triggered. And it's not like they talk about millennials being triggered. And it's like, okay, that's not what we're referring to. A trigger is just something that I guess would make your brain go, uh-oh. And like it's familiar, but in a bad way.
Yeah, so we talked last week really in depth about your trauma and my trauma, just the different things that we went through and how we went about breaking that and like taking it one step deeper, which is what we do here. You really have to dissect each one of these things. And as I said in the beginning, fight and flight, that's something I've heard for, 15 years. I've heard those. And as the research has continued to come out, we've had these other two being added in, freeze and fawn. And we'll go through each one individually. But all of these are responses to what happens. And a lot of the times it's long term. Like these things, yes, you have the trauma that happens and you have the initial response while the trauma is still happening to you. But these type of triggers and responses will continue for years and years and years. Even now, you and I feel like I've broken a lot of those same cycles that have happened in my family, but that doesn't mean that I don't get triggered. That doesn't mean that I don't still have. I was writing down some things like to talk about each one. I was like, ooh, I felt called out because I still face some of these same trauma responses.
Look, something I wrote on an Instagram post a few weeks ago triggered something about your brain that I didn't even realize. And it was just something that once we talked it out, I'm like, okay, now it makes sense. I was like, what's up, Brittany? Like, that's crazy. I didn't understand in the moment, but I realized, oh crap, she got triggered. She got that fight kind of, because you were fighting pretty hard. But
and that's not my usual. Fight is not my usual trauma response. So if I'm fighting, take it seriously.
Well, that's why it caught my attention, because I'm like, best friends, and here she is fighting me on. But it makes sense, because when you recognize that you do things, and especially people that recognize something that's out of the ordinary, and then suddenly you're in this mode of, I don't recognize this person. That's kind of a key in knowing that's probably some kind of a trauma response.
Yeah. And I think the best way to like talk about this, and I've heard this example before, is like, we're talking about trauma responses, and trauma can be anything. It doesn't have to mean, oh, Jimmy's worse than mine or Brittany's is worse than mine. No, trauma is trauma. I've said this a lot, but view it as whether it was sexual trauma or physical trauma or mental trauma, whatever it was that you went through. You can view it as like the tiger is entering the room, and it's how you respond to that tiger being in the room. I mean, number one, are you going to fight? Are you going to attack the tiger? I'm going to tell you what, that is not going to be my initial thing. I am not fighting the tiger. Or are you going to have like this flight where you run from the tiger? Are you going to freeze and you just can't even move because, oh my God, there's a tiger in the room? Or the last one, are you going to beg the tiger, please don't eat me? That's fine.
I'm going to tell you what Jimmy would do. He would soil his pants and then suck his thumb like a little baby. It's funny.
Jimmy would freeze. That's probably what I would do. I would just, whoa, what is this? This is a tiger.
Dig a dent. Exactly.
I don't want to. It's the thrill of the fight. No fighting. I'm not fighting. I let the tiger go. You win. Lay down. I'm done. You got it.
Exactly.
Yes, those are like the general ideas of what each one are, and of course, we'll go deeper into each one of them. But trauma responses, there's 4 different types, and I, like I said, when I was going through these things, I was just like blown away. Like, let's go into it. I keep like talking about, let's go into it. So fight, we're talking, we're looking at emotions, anger, we're talking anger. And again, How many times have I said it? Anger is not an emotion, it's a reaction. And so, but that's usually that first thing that comes up, that, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to get angry. That's the first thing that rises. And so associated with that fight, we're going to have anger. In that, you view your people who are explosive, and they can also be mistyped as narcissist. And what they're actually doing is they're just responding in this angry way. Maybe they are a narcissist, this is true, but maybe they have grown these narcissistic tendencies out of a trauma response. Maybe they are this, I think we've kind of talked about this, that some of the people that we know in our life that we view as narcissistic, what trauma did they go through? This is the way that they're responding to that. And also within that fight, we're thinking about our bullies, the people who have I do not care what your point of view is, like those kind of people where they're just, everything's a fight, everything's this responsive kind of like angry thing.
Yeah, hindsight, I think back to all the bullies all throughout my childhood, middle school, or elementary, middle school, high school, and it never dawned on me they were doing that out of a position of hurt. But hindsight, I kind of go, whoa, that makes so much sense, because it seems so odd. Why would these people be doing these things? And I was the victim of a lot of the bullying. I was a fat kid, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, it was just really fascinating to me to kind of do a retrospect when you think about these people that do those kind of herky-jerky fight kind of movements. It puts a whole new spin on like your whole worldview when you see it through that lens.
I think the word that's coming to mind is transference. When it's coming to this fight, it's, I feel something that I don't like, and I want to transfer what I'm feeling to you. It doesn't really work that way, but that's what it happens in our brains. So these bullies that, in school or in our life, even now as adults, because there are still adult bullies out there, guys. Just get on the online for just a second and you will see. Okay, I had a TikTok blow up yesterday, and I've had to filter through a couple of different hate comments. I've never really had a whole lot of stuff like that, but hey, it comes with the territory, right?
You got 100,000 views in less than 24 hours. That was badass.
I'm sitting at about 150K right now. It's insane.
It's probably getting close to 200K by the time the end of the day comes. Yeah, and all showing your coffee bar. So that was interesting.
The people on the internet, they enjoy what they enjoy, and I'm okay with that. But I had a couple of people on there, and I was thinking, when they were commenting, it doesn't bother me because it always makes me go, what's going on in their life? But, that they were trying to transfer whatever it is that's going on in their life. They're trying to transfer that. And that's really what happens with these internet trolls and internet bullies. I think a lot of them just sit at home on their computer or on their phone, and they've got so much stuff they're dealing with on their own. They're just like, I want to make everybody hurt.
I've been dealing with it for 17 years, so I know all about the internet bullies.
Yeah, and I mean, it sucks. And like on the one hand, I want to go off, I want to fight because like, why are you making me feel like this? And then on the other hand, I'm just like, you know what? I don't even have time to put up with that anymore. I'm not even going to respond to it. You don't deserve a trauma response from me. I've dealt with these people in my life. But anyway, that's really when we're talking about fight. We're talking about these bullies. Typically, people aren't just born a bully. They're not just born that way. Something has happened to them, and that's the way that they're responding.
And it's not human nature to treat another human being like that unless you're mimicking back what you've observed in your own life. And so that goes back to, if you saw nothing but yelling and screaming and abuse as a kid, why would you expect those same people would respond any differently when they become adults? And so, and again, we've talked about this before as well. It's that comfort level because it's what they know. And and so if fight is what you've had to deal with throughout your whole childhood, I think about these kids that they're under very oppressive parents, either a parent or both parents, and they get out of the house. If they're suddenly like in peace, they're in turmoil. They only know fight as the normal response. And so then they become these angry young adults, and people are like, what's wrong with that person?
Yeah. And it's sad. It's really sad. And like you said, they view these things over and over again, and just becomes who they are because it's what they saw. And see, Brittany likes to fuck with these people. Brittany likes to really mess with the people that are angry and they're in this fight. And it's almost because I do know these things. I know these different trauma responses. And so I try to come at it a little bit calmer, a little bit gentle parenting in society, just help parenting other people. But one of the people, they weren't like flat out disgusting in the comments, but they were like, I call BS, and they were a little combative. And so I came back with a calm response. And they immediately redacted everything that they said, and they kind of like scrambled. And doing this online doesn't give quite the satisfaction as in person. Oh my gosh. Doing this in person with someone's like combative and yelling and and I'm just calm, and they're like, oh, I feel stupid.
Yeah. And I think it's even, I do the same, by the way, where passive aggressive comments, they feel like they're not being ugly, but they're being incredibly ugly, and kind of like really tries that, okay, do you want to, but no, we're going to be like, all right, we're going to talk to them like adults. And sometimes they're like, oh, okay, cool. But other times they'll double down and fight doubly. And that's when you deal with them in the appropriate way, like you did with those 2 comments on TikTok. You got rid of them, and it is what it is. I do it all the time. And I see all kind of crap shows on Facebook. Facebook seems to be where it happens. I get a little bit on Instagram, little bit on YouTube, but a lot of it on Facebook for some reason.
Just my personal opinion, it's because the old peoples are on the Facebooks. Just my personal opinion. We talked about, go ahead.
I wouldn't put an age on it. I think once you, look, here's my theory. I think once you, and Twitter is the ultimate shit show. You go on Twitter, it's just off the rails. Here's my theory. Once somebody goes in like that, then you've got a lot of these me too, me too, me too, me too, me too, me too, me too kind of comments, which is why I see an especially ugly comment on my page. I always address it right away, calmly, trying to turn it around. But then inevitably, if they come back double down, I've got to get rid of it, or you're going to see this whole thread of about 20 people that will be like, yeah, and it's just going to cascade into ugliness.
So you guys know I've been doing 75 hard, right? One of the requirements for this is drink a gallon of water per day. I still find myself needing a little extra boost and a little bit more electrolytes to fuel all of these workouts I've been doing. And that's why I'm super excited to be partnered with Element right now on the One Step Deeper podcast, because I am needing all the electrolytes and they are providing life for me right now. They sent me this amazing package, guys. Look. What? We got watermelon, we got orange, we got raspberry, and my personal favorite is citrus, because listen, it reminds me of margarita, and during 75 hard, you can't have those, so I'm telling you, this stuff is giving me life. So if you're interested in trying them for yourself and getting some great electrolytes, you can go to drinklmnt.com/Jimmy, and there you can get a free sample. All you have to do is pay the shipping. Hope you enjoy. Remember, just as Element says, stay salty.
Okay, so that we're going to skip over the next 2 and just kind of go across line, because you brought up something that immediately made me think, okay, let's go into that fawn response. This is not one, within the last year, I just learned about fawning and what that is and what that means. So fawn is related to like codependency. And the people who will not say anything and won't be combative and won't have that fight response, but they see somebody else fighting, they would just kind of come underneath and go, me too. And they're people pleasing, and they do anything that they can to mold themselves to make other people happy. And that is their trauma response.
And to be liked.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yes. And to be liked. They're people pleasing. They're also, this is a tough word to say out loud, and I'll dial it back in a second, but these are the people that play the victim. Okay. And I believe with my entire heart that I am a victim. I was a victim of sexual abuse, of physical abuse. I was a victim. I will always be a victim. That's what happened to me. However, it's my story, and I get to choose what to do with it. And one of those things I won't do is kind of perpetuate, oh, feel sorry for me, which is kind of that fawn response. Feel bad for me, feel sorry for me.
I think some people play the victim of their own manufacturing of victimhood. Not that there's not things that happen, but sometimes something happens and it's just like, do this, okay, that's it. But something happens and they go, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. I can't believe. And for the rest of their life, they're identified by that manufactured victimhood. And again, if you're a true victim like me and Brittany have been with my abuse and her sexual abuse, not talking about you, I'm talking about people. And you know these people in your life. They want to fawn all over, or they want you to fawn all over their victimhood and da-da-da-da. And they literally put things out there just to get you to give them that dopamine hit that they're so desiring by saying, oh, look at, oh, and then whatever they're talking about. Yeah, it's horrible. Never mind if it's true or not. They're just going to agree. And that's what kind of then indirectly encourages that behavior to continue.
Yes, and again, like looking at it from this angle that we're taking today, that it's a trauma response, it makes so much sense.
Yes.
And it's almost like you think about the people who are completely invalidated. Let's just go childhood. This can happen in adulthood too, but childhood is the easiest. Let's say you went your entire childhood and you're never validated in your feelings, and your parents told you were this or you were that, and they made you become a people pleaser as a child. And so as you get older, you've developed this response of, I'm going to please people, but at the same time, ooh, give me validation. I need it. I need it. I need it. I've gone through this thing and I need all the validation. And listen, I seek for validation too. Okay. I know what it's like, and I'm not like making fun of people who still seek validation. You know, a lot of, as Jimmy, just this week, I was really struggling with something and he was trying to validate me and had to turn into Brittany, just fucking get over it, okay? And sometimes that's what I need too. But it's okay to seek validation, but it's these people that keep this pattern over and over and over again. And that's all that they're after. Every post on Facebook, every whine, every complaint is, feel sorry for me. Look at my life. It's just really hard.
And that's a red flag if you ask me. If someone can't see the good in life sometimes, and it's all this woe is me, feel bad for me, look at how sucky my life is. I know this one person locally, all she writes about, you can tell she's groveling for people to help her financially. She'll post, oh, my kids, they wish they had, whatever they wish they had. Oh, I just wish there was some way I could do it for them. And I love them. And it's just like, you can tell what it is. And it's just, and I've called her out on it, not publicly, but behind closed door. Don't do that. Don't do that. Everybody knows what you're doing, but then she just continues to do it. And I don't, for the life of me, understand that mentality.
I've been listening to Andy Frisella way too much. He's the creator of 75 Hard. He's got his own podcast called Real AF, and I've been listening to him way too much. I try to dial it back a little bit more. He's a little more like hard ass. I'm like, here's your tough love with a dose of love. Here's your tough love with a dose of like, okay, I understand. I try to like balance it out there. Not too much toxic positivity, but not too much up here. I try to meet in the middle, but like, yeah, he was talking about this victimhood that people kind of play of, poor me, poor me, poor me. Eventually, you have to understand these trauma responses, they are nobody else's responsibility to deal with than your own. And if you stay in Fawn, you'll always stay in Fawn. You'll always be a victim, and you'll view yourself that way. And you kind of have to I still view myself as a victim, but I have to take my story and go, I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to be defeated. I'm not going to sit in this Fawn response and be people pleasing because people taught me to be that way. Nah, Brittany gonna do for her. And so I sought therapy. I have friends that I talk to. I just kind of got out of that mindset of, oh, poor me, woe is me. I've been there. I have been the Fawn person where I just, oh, look at my life. It's so sad. And oh my gosh, the Facebook memories, y'all. When the Facebook memories be coming back, you like, oh crap. It's nice to know I've grown personally from 10 years ago.
I had one come up recently. I'm like, really? Thanks. That reminder. Thanks. Yeah, Facebook. It's only Facebook. There's no memories on Instagram, memories on Twitter. It's just Facebook. I guess you can turn that off in your settings if you wanted to, but
I start deleting the ones and I'm like, nope, I don't want to see that next year. I'll just delete that out.
Well, the funny thing is it's so random. It'll show you things from a year ago, and the next thing you know, 8 years ago, and it's just so there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, Brittany from 8 to 10 years ago. Ooh, man, completely different person.
But I love seeing those ones, especially when you repost them, because I see the Brittany now, and especially the Brittany the last circa 2.5 years that I've known you, and even how you've grown even the last 2.5 years that I've seen you. And you've talked about this Brittany from 10 years ago, and I kind of go, I like seeing the mind of Brittany then because it makes me appreciate the Brittany I have now.
Okay. I understand, and I completely agree.
Let's put it this way. If you saw the Jimmy of, say, 10, 20, 30 years ago, you'd have been the same way. You'd be like, whoa, Jay. There was no social media 20, 30 years ago. But if you saw writings of mine, you'd be like, wow, he's a good writer. But, whoa, ew, whoa,
I wasn't alive 30 years ago.
I know. It changed your diaper.
I'm sorry. We gotta lighten the mood a little bit, okay?
Yeah, where you weren't born.
Close.
It's like boomer.
Oh goodness. I feel like, going back to like fight or talking about trauma responses, I feel like y'all know how much I talk about boomers. I just not a fan of the boomer stereotype. Let's say it that way. I know people on an individual level and prefer to look at people on an individual level rather than a group setting. But I feel like boomers can be best described as the fight response. That's them defending what they were taught and defending their lives and defending all of these things, and they must anger, all the anger. And I view millennials as like the people who just shut down. We're just like, okay, whatever, I don't care.
The ambivalence more than anything. It's like there's not even a care about it. It's just okay, I'm gonna go about my life. It's no big deal. Like, and so yeah. And I think about the Karen phenomena. Those bitches, man, and not just girls. There's guys that what do they call the guys? The Kens, Darren, I think is what they call them. So it's Karens and Darrens. Oh, yeah. I watch all those Karen videos on YouTube. Those of you on YouTube, go look them up. There's this one I watched, Keto Apocalypse, and then there's Karens in the Wild. That one is hilarious. Go watch those. They're funny. But anyway, but I look at them and I'm like, they're totally in fight mode. It's like, to what end? Because they never get their way. Sometimes they get arrested all at the holy altar of I'm right and you're wrong. Okay. Your fight didn't get you anywhere.
That's exactly what fight is. I'm right, you're wrong. That's what that response is. And all right. So we've touched on fight and we've touched on fawn. Let's go back to flight. And so flight is going to be kind of together with the emotion of fear. I think all of these can really be traced back to fear. It's how you respond to the fear. But flight is mostly like, I see something, I'm going to run away from it. The tiger's in the room. I'm running away.
Yeah, I don't want to be involved. It would be the appropriate kind of analogy here of people see things going on. Oh, I don't want to be involved. And they just flee it. They don't want to be around it.
I've definitely responded in different ways to different situations, but this is me. Flight is mostly me. And I can see a lot of flight in Jimmy as well. And I know that's not necessarily something that we want to see, but when I was looking it up, flight is typically obsessive over something, workaholics. And I view myself that way. Maybe not, work in the way that you would think typically, but I'm always up and busy and doing this or this or this or this. I keep my plate full so that I'm flighting away from the trauma.
Yes. And I know a lot of your flighting is a distraction from things that you're not wanting to think about. That's one. Yes. that you're not wanting to have to deal with in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot in you. And of course, yeah, that's where mine came from. There were things in my life that I was definitely fleeing from. It was too painful to face them head on. So it's easier to run from them and get consumed by the busyness so that it then drowns out the thing you're fleeing from.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was looking this up, jaw on the floor when I saw this, it is the flight response is most often like seen as like ADHD. This has been a brand new discovery in my life, you know, as I started going to as I started going to therapy for trauma. My therapist had pointed out that, yeah, because I was curious. I had done some research on my own. I was like, what do you think about this? And, you know, he was like, yes, absolutely. And, you know, I like thinking of it as which came first, you know, the chicken or the egg, which came first, the trauma or the ADHD, who knows? But it mimics, and it doesn't matter which came first. The same psychological pathways, whether it was CPTSD or it was ADHD, whatever, my brain still does the same thing either way. And so it's nice to have something concrete. But when I'm thinking about this, that flight is, you kind of get stuck in that ADHD cycle of, and we don't have enough time to like uncover all the stuff about ADHD, but please do your own research. ADHD doesn't just include that H anymore. You don't have to be hyperactive in order to have this thing.
Or go watch all of this beautiful lady's TikTok video. That's literally all you do is talk about ADHD all the time. Go follow her, becoming.Brittany Lee on TikTok. 6,500, I believe, followers I saw as of last count. So yeah, you're still growing strong. You had a viral video as of the recording of this, 150,000 plus views and counting. So yeah, you talk about it all the time. I've learned so much watching those TikTok videos because I mean, you and I talk a lot, but
Yeah.
into some of the nuances of this ADHD and how it's related to what we're talking about here today. A lot of the responses, the trauma responses. It's fascinating. Good job, by the way, because you carved out your niche there. And I know you've been looking for, all right, where do I fit in? This podcast, you fit in. And now that TikTok channel, you fit in.
Right. Yeah. I've paved my own way. But, you know, back to this flight, another thing that's associated with it, panic, anxiety. Hello, it's Brittany. Everything's a panic.
By the way, the flight, I'm curious because you're in a relationship, happy marriage for 10 plus years. How does that work when you both flee? So you flee situation, Wild Man flees a situation. How do you guys kind of resolve things that come up when you're both fleeing?
That's a really tough question. In my marriage, I'm the fleer. Chris is the fawn or freeze. Chris is more fawn or freeze, where I'm more flight or freeze.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and I hate that, but he has his own trauma response. I think both of us really stay away from the fight one. I guess it's because the people in our lives, that was their trauma response, and we dealt with the anger from them for so long. We didn't want to put that on each other.
Plus, you don't want to exemplify that in front of your 3 kids.
Yeah, we don't want to. What did I say earlier? Transference. We don't want to transfer our trauma onto our children, so we try to deal with this in a different way. But yeah, what do you do then when both of you are kind of like fleeing from dealing with something? And we have, a lot of this happened within our financial states.
Everybody does that. I think this is why I wanted to have this episode today. Is it's not to point fingers of blame at you. How dare you do that? It's to say, look, this is a normal pattern. Now, once you recognize it, then what?
Yes. See, yes, that is Brittany in a ball. Just, I want to know and understand what I'm doing, how I'm responding, and look at it in a neutral zone. This isn't bad. This isn't good. This is neutral. This is a response that I'm having. I see the patterns. I see the repeating. Now what? That's what you do with these trauma responses. As we were talking about it, don't feel guilty about if you do respond in fight. that's okay, as long as you realize and recognize, oh, this is my pattern, and maybe I learned this fight response from a parent, from a person, from back here, from a trauma. And now that I know this, I understand, okay, it's better for me not to transfer my pain and for me to deal with my pain. That's what these trauma responses what we're talking about today, is that take all of these things that you're learning that Jimmy and I are saying and recognize them as a pattern, and then go, okay, what now?
Yes.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and at Real Good Foods on social media.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the next one is freeze.
Yes, so freeze. This one is often viewed with depression. Yes. And that's it. Exactly. Freeze. It has to do with depression and spacing out. Okay, I'm freezing because you're doing that.
Sorry, I could do that all day.
No. Freezing makes me uncomfortable. I'm just like waiting for Jeopardy music here. Okay. So freeze has to do with spacing out. Definitely me. Ask Jimmy. If we get into something, what? Shut down. Brittany shuts down. This is your shutdown, your freeze.
You go quiet. And when Brittany's quiet, I'm like, here's the dichotomy of our relationship. You go quiet. I know what it is. You're dealing with something. But then in me, I'm like, she's dealing with something. Reach out. Yeah. And then you don't respond. And then I'm like, well, what's wrong? Oh, no. What? I need to help her. And so, I'm not fleeing. I'm trying to fawn a bit to try to see what's wrong with my friend. And then you're fleeing and freezing in your fleeing. And sometimes we kind of butt heads there. I've gotten better at it because I know what it means when you go quiet. And I'm like, okay, she ain't gone forever. She'll come back eventually. And I just got to be okay with that in the meantime.
Yes, communication is key. If you do realize and recognize these patterns, communicate them to the people around you. Now we're talking about, go ahead.
Although to your credit, you know that about me. And you always go, Jimmy, give me some time. I'm all right. Give me some time. And that calms down. So that I realize, okay, she needs the space, I know that on a conscious level, but then hearing it from you. So we give and take from each other.
Yeah, and me and Wildman are the same way. And it took many years of us getting to this point of just communication of, hey, hon, I know that you want to fix this right now because that's your own trauma that you're dealing with. I need to go away. I need to calm myself. And I think it has to do, we have a family joke. It's not funny, but it is funny, called the Barwick temper. My maiden name is Barwick. And it's because our entire family, for generations, there's a pattern of responding in fight. And I saw it, and I didn't want to be associated with the Barwick temper anymore. I didn't want to be a part of that. It's really sad. Like, we all just joke about it, but I don't want to be that anymore. So I go to freeze so that I don't react that way. I go internal.
So you went from the Barwick temper to the Davis détente. Détente, for those of you that don't know, that's kind of where you're kind of seeking peace and you're just kind of backing away and trying to make amends.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a brainer, but I knew you knew what I meant. I was going to say the Davis delusion, but that might have sounded too... Because you're not delusional.
No.
Well, not now. Sometimes. I'm just kidding.
Sometimes. But going back to freeze, other things is these people, they get stuck in decision making. They can't make a decision. They're frozen. They can't decide to do this or that. Also, they disassociate. They like to hide. They like to isolate. And also, freeze has to do with shame. There's a lot of shame feelings and emotions within this freeze point. And you're feeling so down and shameful of yourself and how you respond. Okay, let's go there. I think freeze is the opposite response to fight. Like we were saying, I don't want to fight, but I feel guilty and I feel shame because I'm having the thoughts of wanting to fight and anger. So I freeze instead.
And feel shame because you were told and exemplified to fight. Think about the Barwick temper you talked. Everybody in the Barwick family, that's all they did was fight, fight, fight. So when you now freeze, yes, you're in your comfort zone of trying to break that, but now you've created a new trauma response by now you're feeling guilty because everyone else is doing what they know. I'm not. And you're like, I should be. And so it's such a weird, I'd love to see some psychologists break down what's happening in all the little synapses of your head as you do that freeze when your natural inclination is to fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome way to look at it too. And yeah, maybe in my family, maybe more like other people, this is definitely a thing, but maybe other people resonate with this more than me personally, is you feel shame because, oh, you're the sheep or whatever the negative term is here. You're the quiet one. You're the this, and people put shame on you because you don't act like them. Your trauma response is the same as mine, so you're obviously that's shameful.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? I saw a meme the other day. I think I sent it to you about the black sheep in the family tend to be the ones that are working on their ship more than everybody else.
I have fully stepped. I had a conversation with a good friend 2 days ago. I am fully stepped into my black. If that's what y'all want to call me, call me. I don't even care. I am black sheep status. I am working on my shit. If you want to work on yours, come on, let's go together. Otherwise, I don't have time.
And look, I feel like I've been the black sheep in my family for a little while, definitely the Moore side, and especially the Moore side. And I never understood why until I realized, whoa, I'm growing and everyone else is staying complacent. And so, of course, they're going to see me as the oddball. Of course, they're going to gaslight me and try to make me seem like the oddball when I'm the one actually trying to do something with my life. And everybody else is simply happy with staying in their own trauma responses.
It's because they feel called out when they see, and I've had this response with my family of, Brittany, what the hell are you doing? Oh, look at you. I get that a lot. Oh, look at you. You think you're so great. And I'm like, I really don't care. I don't see myself as great. I see myself as I ain't trying to live this cycle. I'm trying to break this cycle. Excuse me, guys.
Let me tell you something on that. When I was in high school, this just popped in my head. When I was in high school, my dad, anytime I would have accomplishments at school, would be like, well, la dee da, look at who thinks they're important now. And I'm thinking, not congratulations, not wow. Like I was named to the academic decathlon team. So they had this little group of us nerds and they had different categories depending on what your GPA was. And so they had the super smart ones that ended up being like the valedictorian, salutatorian, and top 10. I was in kind of that third tier of like the top 20 to 30 in my class. Remember, I was beating the shit out of and all the things. So I'm pretty happy of where I was in my class. But I was in the third tier. And so I was at the top of the third tier. And so I made the team as one of the third tier members. And so it was a big deal. There was only 9 of us in the whole team. There was 3 in the top, 3 in the middle, and 3 in the bottom group. I was in the bottom group. And I went home and I was like, I made the academic decathlon team and I'm going to get to go and represent the school and da-da-da-da. Yeah, what do you think? What, do you deserve something? He was just like so ambivalent about it. And I'm going, is that jealousy? Is that, I don't know what it was.
It sucks, man. It sucks to have a parent in your life or somebody, some influence in your life, push you, do better. And then you do better and you're like, look what I did. And they're like, and? Ugh, I hate that. Matter of fact. And he said he started listening to the podcast. So if he's listening, this is for you, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
my dad had a conversation the other day about this. I was telling him I was doing 75 hard, and he said, and I had this visceral reaction, and then he softened it. So hold up. Let me tell the whole story before you react. He was like, oh, I saw that. There's no way you're going to be able to finish that. You won't be able to do that. And I was like, I just wanted to like fight. And he's like, and he starts laughing. And I was like, what's he laughing about? He said, I only said that because I know you're just like me. If somebody tells you can't do something, you're going to do everything in your power to do the thing. And I was like, wait a minute. Is my dad therapying me? What is this? Is he calling me out? And so it was really cool to watch that. But yeah, like that. But like your dad, he didn't do that. He almost was doing it to get a reaction out of you, honestly. Of like, what do you want, And that really sucks to have somebody in your life like that, searching for a reaction.
But in the midst of the trauma, and I was like 16, I was still another year and a half away from graduating high school. I was so caught up in the trauma.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have recognized it. Now, my brain now, I'd have been like, dude, really, dude. But like in the midst of it, it was just, okay, one more way I'm discredited. One more way I'm devalued. I'm dehumanized. It just was par for the course at that point.
Yeah. Man, looking back, like all this stuff sucks so bad. All right, I wrote down another list.
Yeah.
That was just mind blowing. I knew some of these things, guys. I cannot. What is wrong today? I have no. Okay.
Response.
So I wrote this down. It says unexpected ways that we experience these trauma responses of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Number 1, food cravings. And I was like, oh, okay, I could see that if we're in flight from something, maybe we have like this food craving instead of fighting. Or
did a stress response that, and I'm going to get a little nerdy because I am in the health world, but like could it be like a cortisol release that then impacts your hunger hormones?
Yeah. They were talking about the cortisol release and how maybe like in the moment you're having all these feelings. It's like the tiger being in the room. Your adrenaline goes mile high, except it's not an actual tiger in the room, but your adrenaline goes a mile high. And then as you drop and you got all this cortisol, you start craving things, and food is one of those things.
If there was a snake in my recording studio, I promise you an hour from now, I would be ravenous.
Exactly, because your body pumps out all of that adrenaline, and it's like, okay, I need fuel, like I have to run. I need fuel.
See, now I've got that in my head. I'm like looking around. Where's it?
Is because our body is made that way. Our nervous system is constantly in check to make sure that we're safe.
And it doesn't have to be real. I think about, just with a snake analogy, that time my dad at the end of a fishing trip threw a rubber snake at me and it landed on my face. I think I told this story. It wasn't even real, but the adrenaline and the freeze response that I had at that moment has terrified me to the point that I'm almost 50 years old and I'm still terrified of snakes. And I never even had a problem with a snake. It was a piece of rubber made in China.
Right, exactly. And so these responses that we're having in the trauma, we have these, I'm putting air quotes here, small things happen that trigger us, and our body remembers the response that we had in the big trauma. And so these little things become big things because they're a trauma response. Oh gosh, man. Oh, I heard this on TikTok from one of my favorite people. He said, if it's hysterical, as in your reaction, if it's hysterical, it's historical, as in it came from your past. Right? I was like, that is golden. If you're hysterical in reaction, it's from your trauma. It's historical. Yes. Mind blown. Okay, so that was food cravings. Also, isolation. Hello, it's Brittany. Codependency. I know some people who, they're codependent as their form of trauma because they didn't have the dependency as a child or some point in their life that didn't have something to be dependent on. And so as an adult, they're codependent. They need that because they didn't have it.
Yes.
Intense body sensations. I wanted to talk about this one. I know you've experienced this one with the dog. I don't know if you want to talk about it. I have one I could talk about. my alligator response. I can't be around alligators because I get this body just like my body just tightens. I get these insane body sensations.
I'll talk about the dog thing. So briefly, I've told this story before. When I was about 10 or so, I got bit in the face by a Doberman Pinscher. I walked into a house. It was visiting a friend, and I just opened the door and walked in because I knew where the friend was, and they were expecting me. So I opened the door, and next thing I know, a Doberman jumps, knocks me down, and is like, rah, 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 right in my face, and then bites me on the face before they got the dog off of me. And I can vividly see that in my mind's eye right now. I can see that whole scenario. Damn me, ketosis brain, remember everything. And so, so now all I have to do is see a dog. It could be a Chihuahua. And well, maybe not Chihuahuas. They don't usually bother me. It's dogs that are kind of medium size or bigger. And, but to this end, I've gotten better. I think I told you recently I was walking away from my farmer's market. I had everything, and suddenly out comes this big dog that was between cars I didn't see till I was right up on it. And normally I would have jumped and froze, and of course the dog smells your fear and starts barking incessantly. This one saw me, started barking. I was calm as a cucumber. And I'm going, what's going on? I'm always terrified of dogs. But here's what's happened. I've acknowledged I'm terrified of dogs, but from I understand what it is and I'm working on it standpoint. And the working on it is working. And I even had a dog recently that I was close to licking me to death, and then they nipped at my finger, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. But then since then, I've seen a couple of other dogs, and I've actually petted the dogs. Like I'm getting better at it. But all of that has been born out of this experience that made me freeze, made me have a physical reaction within my body. The process. And everybody's, go to therapy over it. And you probably should have, but I feel like I'm turning around on that. The snakes still freak me out. I did have just cry like a little girl recently with a snake on a... Huh?
Boys cry too. Boys cry too.
Oh, I'm just using the expression, the colloquialism, cry like a girl, but yes, boys cry too. And this big boy really cries and screams like a little baby.
Oh, yeah. So mine is with alligators, and I won't go into the deep story. The
Yes.
very quick story is when I was young and I was going through my trauma during this time, there was a pond behind my house. And I mean, like, I looked out my back window, there was the pond, like very much there. There was an 11-foot alligator in our pond. I thought that it was 8, and I've told the story many times. It was 8 foot long. And my grandfather recently said, "Oh no, ma'am, it was bigger." And I was like, "Oh gosh, that makes it worse."
8 or 11. That's a big ass gator.
Big alligator, and it had gotten in there, and I think my brain made a connection with the fear of the alligator that was there with the fear and the trauma that was going on behind doors and my sexual trauma.
Yes.
I think that's the connection that my brain made. And it didn't help that I had a boyfriend many years later. We had gone to the zoo, and there were some alligators in there, and I was already kind of fearful. I was already kind of feel that feeling. And the glass was only about this big, and you could literally put your hand over it, and the alligator started coming up and just, like that. Between all three of those things, I cannot be around an alligator. I can't see pictures. I have this reaction, this body sensations that come up. I have a cute video of my husband who was like, "Face your fears," and we went to this alligator park. This whole park of alligators, and I'm just like shaking and freaking out the whole time. I don't know how I made it through, because just right now, like, my heart is pumping thinking about it. But yeah, like, this is a trauma response clearly for me.
So all of you college football fans down there at Florida, sorry, Brittany's no fan.
There was nothing like driving to KetoCon a couple years ago, and we're driving over that really long bridge in Louisiana.
Yeah,
And
Louisiana.
I was like, oh, look, it's so cute, the water. And then it just like, we're in Louisiana. There's probably alligators out there. And Chris is like, yeah. And so I just kind of sitting down in my seat, put my sunglasses on, and look at my phone. Just like, just don't let me see it because it's a long bridge.
So it is a very long bridge. So that's both freeze and flight that you did, sinking and being quiet.
Okay, moving on. Inability to speak, and that's one of the unexpected ways we experience these things. I do that. Inability to speak. Trouble communicating with someone even you're close with, a friend or a partner. You have trouble communicating. And the last one, which I thought was really cool, was not cool, but proving you're right. It's a response of when someone tells you that you're wrong, even though you know that you're right, you feel like this reaction, like, I have to prove I'm the right one here. And I thought that was pretty cool that it's actually a trauma response.
And there's a lot of people that have been traumatized on social media because they all are so confident that they're right, and they're going to beat you over the head with their rightness till you believe.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care anymore. I feel like if you think you're right, you are.
Yes.
And that it's fine.
It's gotten so ridiculous that I'm like, all right, thank you for sharing your opinion. And that's it. Like, I don't make a big deal about it. It's like, if people want to say that, I guess where I do take a little offense to it, and it's like trying to like rein it in, is where it becomes like a personal attack. How dare you believe different than me, and you're a horrible human being. I literally, just before we came on the air, had somebody say, you're the most heartless, idiotic, stupid, dangerous person I've ever met, because I dared to share an opinion that's different than theirs. And it's like, honey child, that is such a trauma response.
I see you trying to do a Brittany reaction there.
Yeah. I ain't gonna do that because I ain't gonna do.
A couple days ago, I was talking, speaking of this, like proving you're right, I had a chance to do this, and I was like, nah, not gonna bother. And so I made a TikTok about it instead. But someone in my life had, I was telling them about my ADHD diagnosis, and they were like, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And I was like, okay. Instead of me like trying to prove that it was correct. And I'm not gonna lie, in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, are they right? Do I not have this? And it makes me second guess myself. And so, like I said, I just made a TikTok about it so I could release that inner energy that I had and not come at anybody. I was just like, let me just put this in creative mode. And there's your good tip. There's your good tip. If you feel like you want to react and fight, flight, freeze, fawn, whatever, go create something, make something. Okay, if you're in freeze mode, you can't deal with something, go draw or write or whatever it is that you respond. Go do something instead of, and then come back to it. Yeah.
Woo, we packed in a lot in episode 35, dissecting trauma responses. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Definitely go look into those even more, you guys. But we're running out of time, so Brittany, close the show.
Thank you guys for being here. All the places you can listen to podcasts: Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and ALEXA. You can listen to us there in the regular podcast format, and then video format. You got YouTube, which is 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We air all the episodes there. That's the first place you'll see them. What? Sunday. Thank you. I didn't say that. And then Facebook community, One Step Deeper Facebook community over there. And then Instagram, One Step Deeper Podcast over on Instagram, and onestepdeeperpodcast.com. All the episodes are there as well. Leave us a review. Jimmy kind of harped on that early on in the show. Please leave us a review. We love hearing from you guys. And Jimmy is Living Low Carb Man on Instagram. I am becoming Brittany Lee over on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you that way. We just love to hear from you guys. Thank you for all the people who always listen here. We love y'all.
We do love y'all, and we have so many ideas. In fact, Brittany and I need to kind of brainstorm what we're going to do the next few months here very soon, because this was the last scheduled one we had on the list. So we got more ideas. But the thing is, we created the show because we got a plethora of ideas. We'll never run out. I still want to do a live show. So if we ever decide to do that, go to our different social media. We will announce we're going to do a live show. Now, it'll be like several weeks ahead of schedule. So if you ever watch it live, we'll keep it up like 24 hours and let you watch. But that could be kind of cool to do a live recording of the One Step Deeper podcast. So stay tuned for that. We will probably do that very soon. So thank you guys so much for being here today, and we'll see you again next week.
OneStepDeeperPodcast.com.
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking, giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy. Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.